November 9th, 1918. In the remote Pomeranian town of Pasewalk, far from the front lines of World War I, Adolf Hitler finds himself confined to a hospital bed. Though he is removed from the political turmoil unfolding outside the hospital walls, this fateful day, marked by the abdication of the Kaiser, carries immense consequences for the future Führer. Suffering the effects of a poisonous mustard gas attack, Hitler finds himself temporarily blinded. As he lays in darkness, the war-torn world outside is undergoing a profound transformation. Before the Great War, Hitler was a rootless, friendless transient from Austria lacking purpose and direction. Army life had brought him a comradeship he had desperately lacked. The war years had been the most fulfilling of the young man's turbulent and often dire existence. His military career was marked by acts of bravery and courage that earned him the Iron Cross Second Class. The young Austrian's devotion to his adopted fatherland was second to none. He was not one to moan and complain about the war. He did not long for home leave as he had no home to go to. He had no family and no sweetheart to receive letters from. Alone in the world, the army and his new fatherland were his life. Now, he faced a new reality. The pastor of the Pasewalk Hospital gathered the wounded troops on the afternoon of November 10th. His voice breaking, the pastor delivered the shocking news that the Kaiser was gone and Germany was now a republic negotiating for peace with the victorious Allies. Though he had some idea of what may be in store, the news still came as a terrible and traumatizing shock. In his own words, "I could stand no more. Everything went black before my eyes. I stumbled back to the ward and threw myself on the bed, burying my burning head on the pillow. I hadn't cried since I stood before my mother's grave, but now I could not help it. So it had all been in vain. The sacrifices and the privations. Did all this happen only so a miserable band of criminals could lay their hands on the fatherland?" In the aftermath of what he deemed these terrible days and worse nights, a metamorphosis occurred within Hitler. The abrupt end to the war left him grappling with a sense of despair and betrayal. His sacrifices and privations and his unwavering loyalty to the fatherland now seemed compromised. But as he absorbed the shock over the following days, a new determination and conviction grew in him, as did a deep-seated anger for those he deemed responsible for Germany's collapse. Again, in his own words, hate for those responsible for this deed. Hate for the lumpen in the pay of enemy propaganda who stole the weapons from our hands, broke our moral backbone, and traded away the crippled Reich for 30 pieces of silver. A biblical reference to Jesus being betrayed by Judas for the same monetary amount. This biblical reference was no accident. In his vagabond years in Linz, Vienna, and Munich, he had cultivated a bitter anti-Semitism. He blamed the Jews for not only stealing fair Aryan maidens from under the German noses, but also for the decadence and corruption of modern city life. This bitter sentiment against Jews was combined with a hatred for the other group he blamed on Germany's downfall, the Marxists. According to Hitler, the collapse of Germany was no accident, and he knows exactly who was to blame. In these dark days, Hitler abandons his earlier aspirations of becoming an artist or architect. The shattered illusions of a post-war Germany lead him to a decisive resolution: to enter politics. The unknown wounded soldier, known for his fervent diatribes against Marxists and Jews, embarks on a solitary mission against what he considers his own world of enemies. In a stroke of good fortune for Adolf Hitler, the German army finds itself in need of a dedicated and loyal soldier during the bleak days at the end of 1918. Having retained his position within the 2nd Bavarian Infantry Regiment, Hitler, upon regaining his sight, receives orders to return to Munich. Stationed at the regiment's Türkenstrasse barracks, he finds himself assigned to guard duty at a Russian POW camp near the city of Traunstein. He finds himself in a well-placed position to witness the unfolding political turmoil in Munich in early 1919, and soon emerges as a noteworthy figure to his superiors in the army who recognize his talents as a speaker. Hitler proves to be invaluable in controlling radicals within the regiment and inciting nationalist fervor among the troops. Bearing witness to the rise and fall of left-wing regimes in Munich only fuels Hitler's passionate prejudice against Jews and Bolsheviks, an ideological stance that endears him to his superior officers on the right. Following the suppression of the Munich Soviet, Hitler supplies his superiors with information on suspected communists in his regiment, which leads many of them to the firing squad. This earns Hitler the appointment of a V-man or Vertrauensmann, a trusted agent in a newly established army department, the Abteilung E.B.P. Darkness over Deutschland will return after this short break. Tasked with rooting out left-wing elements in the Reichswehr, this intelligence outfit also keeps a vigilant eye on the many burgeoning political groups in Munich. At the same time, the Abteilung provides a range of different speakers to ensure that the spirit of Germany's new soldiers remains firmly nationalist and untainted by political radicalism. As part of his preparatory work for the Abteilung, V-Man Hitler is required to attend a course at Munich University run by the army, a course where right-wing professors indoctrinate potential political agents. One of these right-wing professors, Karl Alexander, has just concluded a history lecture when he notices a small group which has remained behind in the hall. They are gathered around a man who is, in Karl Alexander's words, haranguing them with mounting passion in a strangely guttural voice. I had the feeling their excitement derived from him, and at the same time, they were inspiring him. He notes that the men seemed completely spellbound by the speaker. At his following lecture, Karl Alexander draws the attention of the Abteilung commander, Captain Karl Mayer, to the unknown but passionate orator. He summons the awkward soldier for a sit-down interview, and suitably impressed, soon assigns Hitler his first mission in the field. A series of talks at Camp Lechfeld in August 1919, a transit camp for prisoners of war returning from Russia, many still under the influence of Bolshevism. The fiery speeches Hitler delivers to these returned troops convinces Captain Mayer that the 37-year-old recruit is a born demagogue. He sees that Hitler has a gift for not only compelling his audiences and grabbing their attention, but converting them in a near miraculous way to his own viewpoint. The following month, Hitler attends a meeting of the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist group associated with the Thule Society. Despite its previous failures to attract workers to nationalism, Hitler's impromptu speech that night, triggered by a call for Bavarian separation, marks a turning point. Anton Drexler, one of the founding members of the party, immediately recognizes the power of his guttural oratory, just as Captain Karl Mayer had done. He hurries after the shabby former soldier and presses the party's political pamphlet into his hands. That night, as Hitler lies awake in his soldiers' barracks watching the mice run across the floor, he reads through Drexler's manifesto. He sees the potential power in uniting the core beliefs of non-Marxist socialism with racist nationalism, a combination leading to the creating of a new National Socialism. 1 week later, Hitler, to his surprise, receives an unsolicited postcard notifying him that he has been enrolled as a member of the German Workers' Party. Partly amused and partly curious, Hitler decides to attend the next meeting of the group at the Altes Rosenbad restaurant. By the end of that meeting, Hitler finds himself somewhat unimpressed with the bureaucratic course the Knight is taking, which includes a treasurer's report that the party's financial balance consists of a grand total of 7 marks and 50 pfennigs. After the boring and stuffy meeting, Hitler concludes that the party has no future. In his words, it is a political club life of the lowest sort. Aside from a few broad paragraphs, the party has no full program, no membership cards, no office, not even a miserable rubber stamp. Despite this initial impression, Hitler changes his mind after only a few days and begins to see the possibility of taking over the fledgling party and bending it to his own will. As small and amateurish as the party currently is, it offers a potential path to future power. Upon his speedy appointment as the party's propaganda and publicity man, Hitler uses the regimental typewriter at his barracks to tirelessly hammer out invitations to party meetings. When he is done, he personally drops them into the letterboxes of people of influence who have the potential to become supporters of the D.A.P. This energetic activity soon begins to pay off. Party membership climbs to 23. Hitler's next move is to duplicate invitations via a mimeograph and scatter them in the streets. This tactic sees the party's membership climb to 34 members. The following meeting attracts its biggest audience yet, an attendance of over 100 people. Darkness over Deutschland will return after this short break. With momentum on his side, Hitler next takes out a paid advertisement in the Völkischer Beobachter, a racialist newspaper that will soon become the party's official propaganda organ. This move slightly alarms his party comrades who prefer not to bring any public attention to their party in the hope of avoiding the government who is cracking down on extremist parties. The bold tactic pays off for Hitler, however, as he addresses another packed hall at the party's subsequent meeting. Next, Hitler directs his focus to the meticulous organization of the party. The so-called office is no more than a cigar box, harboring meager funds and a handful of envelopes. Undeterred, Hitler secures a windowless room at the Sternecker Brau, the very beer hall where he had first encountered the party, and rents it out for a monthly fee of 50 marks. To finance this venture, he introduces a 50 pfennig fee for admission to party meetings, an unheard-of move which once again unsettles his timid party comrades. However, Hitler's reputation as a captivating, rabble-rousing speaker continues to spread, and the number of attendees continues to climb. As the year draws to a close, membership swells to nearly 200, and Hitler successfully ousts his primary party rival, Karl Harrer of the Thule Society. In a strategic move, Hitler begins populating the party with soldiers from his regiment, appointing his wartime sergeant, Max Amann, as the party's first paid full-time employee. By February 1920, Hitler deems the party ready for its inaugural foray into mass politics. He secures Munich's largest beer hall, the Grand Hofbrauhaus, for a monumental meeting, and promotes it with eye-catching blood-red posters. Hitler's deliberate choice, partly because he deems it to be the most exciting color, and partly to provoke his communist and socialist adversaries who lay claim to the color red. On the evening of the meeting, February 24th, the Hofbrauhaus is packed with more than 2,000 people. After tearing into the Jews and the Versailles Treaty to much applause, Hitler proceeds to unveil a new manifesto, a 25-point program jointly devised by Drexler and Hitler himself. The new 25-point program blends a mixture of racism in its hatred of Jews, nationalism in its rejection of the Treaty of Versailles, conservatism in the rejection of the Republic, and anti-capitalism in its calls to tax big business in favor of the little men and the workers. Hitler's tactics succeed beyond his wildest dreams, and his manifesto resonates with the audience. Despite organized opposition and catcalling from left-wingers who have gate-crashed the meeting, Hitler, aided by his own entourage of troops and strong-arm thugs, stays on top, and by the end of the evening, he wins over even the doubters. Later, reflecting on the moment, he remarks, "When I close the meeting, I am not alone in thinking that a wolf is born that is destined to break into the herd of deceivers and misleaders of the people." In a remarkable turnaround, Adolf Hitler is transforming the fledgling German Workers' Party into a formidable political force. Fueled by his passionate oratory, Hitler strategically navigates the party through challenges, leveraging unconventional tactics such as paid advertisements, packed meetings, and a carefully crafted manifesto that resonates with a growing audience. Despite initial doubts among party members, Hitler's captivating speeches and relentless organizational efforts lead to a surge in membership. In February 1920, a pivotal meeting at Munich's Hofbrauhaus marks the culmination of his efforts, drawing over 2,000 attendees. Hitler's 25-point program, blending elements of racism, nationalism, conservatism, and anti-capitalism, strikes a chord with the audience and showcases his ability to unite disparate ideologies. With momentum on their side, the NSDAP, under Hitler's charismatic leadership, is emerging as a potent political contender, poised to challenge the existing order and shape the course of German politics in the turbulent post-war era. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving it a thumbs up or leaving a short comment. Thank you for listening to the Darkness Over Deutschland podcast.